Have you ever noticed how some people seem to cut through life with a sharpness that others can't match? Almost as if they see a dimension most of us overlook? They enter a room and shift the atmosphere, not by being louder, but by being impossibly precise. Their words are measured, their moves calculated, and while the rest of us wrestle with uncertainty, they walk forward with unsettling clarity. Think back to moments when you were left wondering how someone always seemed one step ahead, at work, in friendships, even in conflicts. You thought you had the upper hand only to realize they had already anticipated your reaction. That quiet sting of being outmaneuvered is something we have all felt, and it lingers far longer than we admit. Niccolo Machiavelli, the Renaissance thinker often caricatured as ruthless, actually revealed something uncomfortable but profoundly true. Life is not a stage where the naive thrive. It is a theater where power, perception, and strategy silently dictate outcomes. While many choose to pretend the game isn't happening, a rare few learn to see its rules, and that sight alone makes them appear sharper, more prepared, and even dangerous. This video isn't about admiring manipulation or celebrating cruelty. It's about pulling back the curtain on truths you already sense, but haven't put into words. The 8 dark rules we're about to explore aren't a manual for domination. They are lenses to help you notice the undercurrents shaping every human interaction. And once you see them, you can no longer unsee them. So ask yourself, in your own life, how many times have you lost not because you lacked talent or effort, but because you were playing with honesty while others played with strategy? How many times did your good intentions blind you to the silent rules others were exploiting? Machiavelli's insights might feel uncomfortable, even cynical, but sometimes the most transformative lessons come wrapped in shadows. They don't flatter our ideals. They test them. And maybe, just maybe, by understanding these rules, you can sharpen your perception without corrupting your soul. Before we dive into the first of these 8 rules, take a moment. Reflect on the last time you felt outplayed, underestimated, or blindsided. That memory is the perfect doorway into what we're about to uncover. And if this resonates already, leave a comment below sharing one situation where you felt someone was 2 moves ahead of you. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because what we are about to unravel might just change the way you see every interaction from now on. What if, instead of being surprised by other people's hidden motives, you could anticipate them before they even surfaced? Imagine walking into a meeting and sensing the quiet alliances already at play. Picture yourself in a conversation where you not only hear the words, but also read the intentions behind them. How would that change the way you navigate your daily life? The truth is, most of us move through the world as if it were straightforward, as if words always mean what they say and actions are always pure. But deep down, you've probably felt that reality has layers, some visible, most concealed. What if you could learn to see those hidden patterns as clearly as reading a book? Machiavelli's perspective challenges us to stop wishing for a world of perfect transparency and instead face the one that actually exists. And here's the empowering twist. Once you accept that human interactions often carry hidden strategies, you begin to move differently. You stop being the person who reacts late and start being the one who perceives early. Imagine how this shift could impact your relationships. Instead of being shocked by betrayal, you would already notice the subtle signs of shifting loyalty. Instead of being silenced in a negotiation, you would calmly recognize the tactics being used against you. This isn't about becoming cold or manipulative. It's about refusing to be naive. It's about stepping out of the role of the unsuspecting character and into the role of the one who sees the whole play. This vision might feel intimidating, even overwhelming. After all, who wants to live constantly suspicious? But what if it's less about suspicion and more about awareness? What if the true gift of these darker insights is not paranoia, but clarity? A clarity that allows you to navigate with strength rather than stumble in confusion. So here's the what if I want you to hold in your mind as we journey through the 8 rules. What if your sharpness didn't come from being harder, but from being clearer? What if your advantage came not from dominating others, but from finally refusing to be blindsided by them? Sit with that vision. Let it grow. Because once you start to imagine this sharper version of yourself, the possibility begins to take root. And soon, it might become your reality. Most of us were raised with the comforting belief that if you are good, fair, and hardworking, life will reward you accordingly. It is a beautiful idea, noble even, but it often collides with the reality we witness as adults. How many times have you seen someone less competent rise faster, not because of their talent, but because of their ability to navigate appearances, alliances, and timing? Here lies the first shock. Life is not a meritocracy, at least, not entirely. And Machiavelli forces us to confront this uncomfortable truth. Those who rely solely on honesty and effort often find themselves disappointed, while those who understand the hidden levers of influence quietly advance. This does not mean abandoning integrity or becoming manipulative. It means recognizing that playing fair in a world that doesn't reward fairness can leave you perpetually vulnerable. The rupture with normality is realizing that naivety is not virtue. It is weakness dressed as purity. Virtue, in the deeper sense, is choosing clarity over illusion and courage over comfort. Think about how many times you told yourself, "If I just keep doing my best, people will notice." Did they? Or did they notice the louder, sharper, more strategic presence instead? This is not to dismiss effort, but to highlight that effort without strategy is often invisible. And here lies the disruptive insight. Good intentions alone are not enough. Machiavelli's darker wisdom cuts through the fantasy of fairness. He reminds us that the world is a stage of competing interests, and to ignore that is to walk blindly into traps set by those who see more than you do. The common belief that truth always wins sounds inspiring, but history tells a harsher story. Truth does not win on its own. It needs to be carried, protected, and strategically delivered by those strong enough to hold it. Breaking this illusion is painful because it strips away a layer of innocence, but it is also liberating. Once you stop expecting the world to reward you simply for being good, you begin to craft a sharper, wiser approach, one that combines integrity with strategy. So let me ask, where in your life are you still clinging to the illusion of fairness, waiting to be rewarded for virtues that others overlook? And how would your choices shift if you accepted that clarity and strength, not innocence, are what truly shape outcomes? When Niccolo Machiavelli wrote The Prince in the 16th century, he wasn't inventing cruelty or manipulation. He was observing the raw mechanics of power as they actually unfolded around him. His work has been both vilified and admired, often misread as a call to ruthless ambition. But beneath the reputation lies something far more subtle, a mirror held up to human behavior stripped of illusions. Consider this. Machiavelli lived in Florence, a city-state torn by constant shifts of power, betrayal, and fragile alliances. He watched men rise not through purity, but through perception, not through brute force alone, but through calculated foresight. To him, ignoring these dynamics was not noble, it was suicidal. In his own words, "It is better to face the world as it is, not as we wish it to be." This is where the weight of authority matters. Machiavelli wasn't a detached philosopher speculating from a tower. He was a man in the trenches of politics, exiled, humiliated, and yet relentlessly observant. His insights carry the gravity of experience. They were forged not in theory, but in the chaos of survival. Modern psychology echoes this uncomfortable realism. Thinkers like Robert Greene, in The 48 Laws of Power, and even behavioral scientists studying social hierarchies, remind us that influence is rarely distributed evenly. People are drawn to strength, clarity, and the ability to anticipate moves before they happen. And those who fail to see these dynamics often become the quiet casualties of power games they never even noticed. This doesn't mean adopting cynicism as a worldview. It means reclaiming awareness. To understand Machiavelli is to realize that dark wisdom isn't necessarily corrupting. It can also be protective. Just as martial arts are not about seeking violence but about preparing for it, his rules are not about seeking domination, but about equipping yourself for the realities of human interaction. Think of literature that has stood the test of time. Shakespeare's tragedies, Dostoevsky's psychological dramas, even the political undercurrents in modern novels. They all whisper the same truth Machiavelli declared openly. Humans are not only guided by ideals but also by ambition, fear, and desire. pretending otherwise only makes us blind. So as we step deeper into his rules, hold this in mind. Machiavelli's wisdom is not a call to abandon your values, but a challenge to anchor them in reality. Because values without realism crumble, and realism without values corrupts. The task is to unite them. If you pause for a moment and look back at your own experiences, you will notice patterns that repeat themselves with uncanny consistency. Think about workplaces, friendships, even family dynamics. There is always someone who thrives not because of their brilliance, but because they understand how to position themselves. There is always someone overlooked, despite their quiet dedication. These are not accidents. They are patterns of human behavior that most people sense but rarely name. Machiavelli named them. He stripped away the polite masks and pointed directly at the undercurrents we all feel. The tendency for appearances to matter more than substance. The way loyalty often bends when power shifts. The ease with which words can be used as weapons. He dared to articulate what most of us would rather ignore, that people are not only guided by ideals, but by fear, ambition, and self-interest. Psychology confirms what he saw centuries ago. Cognitive biases shape our decisions far more than we admit. We favor confidence over competence, charisma over honesty, perception over reality. And once you start noticing these patterns, the world becomes less confusing. That coworker who always manages to impress superiors despite weak results? They are exploiting a bias toward visibility. That friend who drifts away when your circumstances change? They are following the gravitational pull of self-preservation. The invisible problem is not that these patterns exist. They always have. The problem is our denial of them. We tell ourselves stories that comfort us like, hard work always pays off, or good intentions are enough, when deep down we know exceptions to these rules are everywhere. The tension between what we believe should happen and what we actually see leaves us vulnerable, frustrated, even bitter. But awareness transforms frustration into strength. When you finally see the dynamics clearly, you stop personalizing them. You realize it wasn't your lack of worth that caused someone to overlook you. It was their blindness to anything that wasn't loud or convenient. You realize betrayal wasn't always about you. It was about them following their own survival map. And here lies the invitation. Start noticing. Watch the subtle shifts in tone when power enters a room. Notice who speaks confidently, even when uninformed. Pay attention to how quickly loyalty evaporates when self-interest is at stake. The more you see, the less you will be caught off guard. Because the first step to becoming sharper is not to change others. It is to remove the blindfold from your own eyes. Some truths do not need long explanations. They strike with the force of a blade and stay lodged in the mind. Machiavelli was a master of such truths. He wrote sentences that could pierce through illusions in a single stroke. And in our own lives, these phrases act like wake-up calls. Short, sharp reminders that clarity is stronger than comfort. Here are a few distilled insights drawn from his dark wisdom and echoed across history. People judge more by appearances than by reality. It is safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. The promise of loyalty often fades when survival is at stake. The world does not reward innocence. It rewards strategy. Each of these statements is unsettling. They contradict the soothing lessons we grew up with, and yet when you hear them, part of you recognizes their truth. Haven't you already seen how appearances overshadow substance? Haven't you felt how fragile loyalty becomes when circumstances shift? The power of such statements lies not just in their harshness but in their clarity. They cut through excuses and force us to see reality without decoration. And here's why that matters. Until we put words to the dynamics we sense, we remain powerless to act on them. A phrase like "effort without strategy is invisible" is not just a clever line. It's a mirror, showing you why you've been overlooked despite your dedication. These key declarations also serve another purpose. They stay with you. When you walk into a meeting, the phrase "people judge more by appearances than by reality" echoes in your mind, reminding you to carry not only substance, but presence. When someone makes a promise of loyalty, you remember, loyalty bends when survival is at stake, and you take their words with measured caution. Think of them as mental weapons, small, sharp blades you can carry anywhere. Not to wound others, but to cut through your own illusions. To remind you that the world does not operate on the rules you wish it did, but on the ones it always has. So the question is, which of these phrases cuts deepest for you right now? Which one exposes the blind spot you've been avoiding? Hold on to it. Let it sting, because sometimes the sting is exactly what keeps you awake. One of the most striking lessons from Machiavelli's shadowed wisdom is the paradox that power and vulnerability are often intertwined. On the surface, it seems obvious that strength is the opposite of weakness, but life rarely follows such simple logic. The very qualities that make us admirable, honesty, generosity, openness, can also make us exploitable. And the traits that make someone feared or cautious, distance, calculation, restraint, can ironically protect them. This duality is everywhere once you begin to notice it. The generous leader who gives too much is often drained by those who take without gratitude. The friend who reveals every thought ends up betrayed by someone who weaponizes their openness. On the other side, the person who keeps their cards close, who offers kindness sparingly, is sometimes judged as cold, but they also avoid the traps of overexposure. Machiavelli would argue that wisdom lies not in rejecting one side of this paradox, but in holding both at once. To be too vulnerable is to invite exploitation, but to be too guarded is to lose trust and connection. Real sharpness comes from balancing the two, revealing enough to build bonds, concealing enough to protect yourself. Philosophers and writers across centuries echo this truth. Consider Shakespeare's King Lear, where reckless trust leads to ruin, or Dostoevsky's The Idiot, where pure innocence is crushed by a world that cannot handle it. These stories remind us that goodness without strategy is fragile, and strategy without goodness is hollow. The paradox is not a flaw, it is the human condition. So here is the hidden lesson. Vulnerability is not weakness if it is chosen. When you reveal yourself with awareness, you transform exposure into courage. And power is not cruelty if it is disciplined. When you wield strength with responsibility, you prevent chaos rather than create it. The challenge is not to choose one side, but to navigate both. To know when to speak and when to remain silent. When to give and when to withhold. When to trust and when to protect. This dance between opposites is what makes someone truly sharp, not rigid but adaptable. So ask yourself, where in your life are you leaning too heavily on one side of this paradox? Are you too open, giving away power unconsciously? Or too guarded, losing opportunities for depth and trust? Real maturity is learning to stand with one foot in each world, neither naive nor cynical, but awake. At first, Machiavelli's rules may feel like a burden, as if they demand you to walk through life with constant suspicion. But if you look deeper, there is an unexpected reward: freedom. Not the loud kind of freedom that comes from breaking chains, but the quiet freedom of moving through life without illusions weighing you down. Think of how much energy is wasted on disappointment. We expect loyalty and feel crushed when it fades. We expect fairness and feel bitter when it never arrives. We expect honesty and feel betrayed when we discover the opposite. Each of these moments drains us, not only because of the event itself, but because of the surprise. What hurts is not just the betrayal, but the fact that we didn't see it coming. Awareness changes that. When you understand the darker rules, you no longer live shocked by the world. You live prepared for it. Betrayal may still hurt, but it no longer blindsides you. Injustice may still frustrate you, but it doesn't shatter you. Instead of asking, "Why me?" you start asking, "One, what can I learn? How can I move differently?" That shift alone can save years of bitterness. And here lies the personal reward. Clarity sharpens your resilience. You stop giving your power away to false expectations. You begin to engage with people as they are, not as you wish them to be. And in doing so, you reclaim a kind of strength that no disappointment can take from you. Imagine carrying that strength into your daily life. You walk into difficult conversations with composure because you know the hidden rules of persuasion. You face challenges at work with patience because you can read the subtle games others play. You enter relationships with eyes open, choosing to trust not from naivety but from conscious decision. This is not paranoia. It is mastery, and mastery has a reward that goes beyond strategy: peace of mind. Because once you stop demanding that the world conform to illusions, you begin to live with less friction. You move more lightly, more decisively, more authentically. So let me ask you, what would change in your life if you no longer wasted energy on being surprised by human behavior? What could you build, pursue, or protect if you faced reality with eyes wide open? The reward is not becoming cold, it is becoming free. To tie these 8 rules together, we need a structure that explains why they work, not as isolated tricks, but as parts of a deeper pattern. Machiavelli wasn't simply writing about princes and politics. He was describing a framework of human nature that psychology and philosophy continue to affirm today. At the core lies one simple truth: people are driven by a mixture of fear, desire, and perception. Strip away the details, and nearly every decision can be traced back to these forces. Fear pushes us to protect ourselves. Desire pulls us toward gain. Perception shapes the way others respond to us, and often matters more than reality itself. From this lens, the 8 dark rules are not cynical inventions, but reflections of these forces in action. When Machiavelli says appearances matter more than reality, he is pointing to the psychological bias that makes humans trust what they see over what they know. When he warns about the fragility of loyalty, he is echoing the survival instinct that bends morality under pressure. And when he suggests that clarity and strategy outweigh innocence, he is aligning with the philosophical tradition that values prudence as the highest virtue. Thinkers across time have recognized this same framework. Aristotle spoke of phronesis, practical wisdom, as the bridge between ideals and reality. Nietzsche warned against comforting illusions that keep us weak. Modern behavioral science reveals how cognitive shortcuts, biases, heuristics, blind spots, govern more of our choices than we care to admit. In every case, the message is the same. To see reality clearly is the first step toward moving within it effectively. This conceptual foundation also resolves the tension between ethics and realism. It shows us that recognizing darker truths does not demand abandoning our values. Instead, it demands situating those values within the landscape of human behavior as it actually is. To ignore the framework is to build castles on sand. To embrace it is to anchor our integrity in solid ground. So when you hear these rules, don't think of them as advice for manipulation. Think of them as a map of instincts, drives, and perceptions that silently shape every interaction. You cannot change the terrain, but you can learn to walk it with sharper eyes and steadier steps. And perhaps the greatest wisdom is this: once you see the framework, you can no longer play the game unconsciously. You either step in with awareness, or you are played. The choice is always yours. We've journeyed through Machiavelli's 8 dark rules, and perhaps by now you feel the tension between discomfort and recognition. His wisdom doesn't flatter us. It doesn't tell us what we want to hear. Instead, it holds up a mirror, one that reflects both the shadows of human nature and the strength that comes from facing them without fear. The temptation at this point might be to dismiss it all as too harsh, too cynical. But pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what has hurt you more in life? The cruelty of others or your own unpreparedness for it? What has weakened you more? The existence of betrayal or the fact that you never saw it coming? Often, it is not reality itself that breaks us, but our illusions about it. Machiavelli's gift is not a manual for manipulation. It is a wake-up call to clarity. He invites us to stop expecting a fair stage and instead sharpen ourselves for the stage we are already on. And when you do that, when you combine awareness with integrity, perception with principle, you stop being outplayed, you stop being surprised, you start living with the quiet confidence of someone who sees what others ignore. And this is the final paradox. By embracing these darker truths, you don't become colder, you become freer. Freer from the exhausting weight of false expectations. Freer from bitterness when others fail to live up to ideals they never promised. Freer to act, to choose, to protect, and to build with eyes wide open. So here's the mirror I want to leave with you. Are you willing to stop wishing for a world that does not exist, and instead sharpen yourself for the one that does? Because that single decision, the choice to see, can change not only how you protect yourself, but how deeply you grow, love, and lead. Now it's your turn. Which of these rules struck you the hardest? Which one forced you to rethink something you've always believed? Share your reflection in the comments. I want to hear your story. And if this journey has challenged you, awakened you, or even unsettled you, give this video a like and subscribe. Not just for more content, but to be part of a community that chooses clarity over illusion, strength over naivety, and truth over comfort. Because in the end, sharpness is not about cutting others down. It's about refusing to be blinded and living with the kind of vision that makes you impossible to deceive.